So thank you and welcome to the next installment of the JASE Associate Editor Corner. We are very pleased today to have a very special guest, the new Editor-in-Chief of JASE, Dr. Patty Pellikka. Dr. Pellikka, thank you so much for joining us today. I know your time is incredibly busy. I just wanted to introduce you a little bit to the JASE readership and those who may not be as familiar with you or your work. Can you tell everybody a little bit about where you're from and a little bit about your background?
Sure. And thanks for having me here, Jordy. It's a pleasure to meet with you today. I'm a native of Minnesota, and I completed and have spent most of my career here in Minnesota. I'm a graduate of Mayo Medical School. Then I went to Boston for a year for my intern year at Beth Israel Deaconess, came back to Minnesota, completed medical residency and cardiology fellowship, and joined our faculty, and I've been here ever since. It's pretty easy to live here in Minnesota if you can tolerate the weather.
That's fantastic. And, you know, of course, we would always love you back in Boston, but we understand you're born and raised in Minnesota and then some. So how, you know, obviously you've done quite a bit with your career thus far, including, you know, being president of the American Society of Echocardiography in the past. And I'm just wondering, what are some of the highlights of your career that you'd like to sort of let the JASE readership know about, and tell us a little bit about where you see sort of your focus and overall focus of your career, both prior and now.
I've always been interested in research with echocardiography, primarily using echocardiography as a tool to manage patients and to better understand patients' diseases. So I've applied it to various sorts of valvular heart disease, trying to determine optimal measurements that would guide timing of intervention, study different disease characteristics with echocardiography and new technology. And now I'm particularly interested in applying AI to the echocardiographic images to see what else we can obtain from the data. But it all is very clinically focused and goes back to really trying to understand how we can use echo to better care for patients.
Well, that's great. And I think it's obviously a very important, many areas to be involved in, but particularly as I often tell my fellows, echo is sort of the best biomarker of the test of the heart in many ways, in that you're getting a lot of hemodynamic and structural and functional information that you really can use to be able to make great assessments of patients, and yet a, you know, cheap and relatively you know, universal test, so that it's something that can be done sort of around the world. So where do you see, in particular with regard to JASE, where do you see the direction of echo science headed, and where do you see so the next 20 years or even 5 years, given you know, the upcoming with your upcoming tenure, you know, where do you see the direction of echocardiography science headed?
That's an interesting question. You know, echo has been a mature technique for a long time already. I started our stress echo when I joined our faculty many years ago. I started working on it when I was a fellow, really learning how to interpret stress echo by doing it on patients that agreed to have echo images done at the time of exercise ECG, and just correlating it with all the information that I got from that, and just learning how to do and interpret stress echo. And now with stress echo, we've applied, we've kind of branched out and looking at additional information from that test, adding strain, including left atrial strain to stress echo, doing lung ultrasound, and also measuring diastolic function, EDE prime, TR velocities, and evaluating valvular heart disease, as well as hypertrophic cardiomyopathy in patients having stress echo. So the technology and techniques and the information that we can get from the tests continues to evolve. And I think this is going to be continued. We need echo technology that helps us better evaluate and image patients that are technically difficult to image. We need more standardization and increased quantitation, and I think AI will help us in that regard. There's still a lot to be done, though. I think echocardiography is still a wonderful field, and I still encourage my fellows and learners to pursue this field. There's plenty of work to be done, and the field is going to continue to grow. It's just such a wonderful technique for patients.
Yeah, I completely agree. I am of the sort of philosophy that I think echo is such a portable and easy test to do that you can get an enormous amount of information in a very short amount of time. And so that while that's always been the case, it's increasingly more the case as we sort of start to use other techniques, as you mentioned, lung ultrasound and other types of techniques, and also using ultrasound in a broader population. And using potentially sort of focused cardiac ultrasound or cardiac focus. So how do you see that evolution in terms of the science of this development? So in other words, how would you foresee the science of cardiac focus or the science around sort of other areas in anatomy or otherwise that we were using ultrasound in? How do you see that evolving going forward in the future?
Yeah, POCUS is a great technology, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
it really helps at the bedside to understand the patient as an extension of the physical exam. It's just far superior to the stethoscope. So for teaching on rounds and understanding what is going on at that point in time, it's just fantastic. But now the devices have become so inexpensive and widely available. And there is even technology that can guide you on how to obtain the images if you're an inexperienced user. So I think the use of POCUS is going to just continue to increase. And it is good in that it will bring this echo technology to patients throughout the world who might not have had access to a full echo. But it also has challenges in that not everyone who's using it is going to have the experience and understanding that comes with echocardiography in our clinical laboratories. So this is an opportunity for standardization, technology developments, and artificial intelligence.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, standardizing and also using the AI at scale deployed on a POCUS device, for example, could really sort of help bring a lot of both standardization and insights from imaging. So that's really fantastic. So, sort of briefly, I guess, where do you see JASE itself as a journal headed in the next? I mean, JASE follows the evolution of echo, of course, but more broadly speaking, are there particular directions that you think are that you'd like to focus on with JASE and things that you think are as goals of your tenure?
Yes, I've been giving that a lot of thought. And of course, I'm really excited about taking over this job and thinking about how I can take JASE to an even greater, higher level. JASE is in a somewhat different position than most journals in that we are very closely allied with the American Society of Echocardiography. And so we share ASE's mission in advancing cardiovascular ultrasound by excellence in innovation, education, and research. So in contrast to some of the journals that are just focused on multimodality imaging, we will continue to be interested in cardiovascular ultrasound, although multimodality imaging is also part of the practice of most people who do cardiovascular ultrasound. So how it's combined and used in tandem with and helps validate, support, all of that is of interest. but it would be, but still our focus is cardiovascular ultrasound. And that will remain a focus as long as that is the focus and goal of American Society of Echocardiography. Some of the new things that I have planned are more focus issues. And of course, the January issue on valvular heart disease is our first example of that. It was quite easy to come up with the topic of valvular heart disease because we had these great rheumatic heart disease guidelines that were just about ready to be published. And we always receive fantastic submissions on valvular heart disease. And I personally find it very interesting. So, but the whole issue is on valve disease, everything, even the letters to the editor, and lots of great images. It's fantastic. So I'd encourage everyone who's listening to make sure you check it out. I really want to be connected with our readership and to understand what they want to see and what we can do as a journal that is more helpful and more valuable. I'm doing a webinar on January 26th on how to publish in JASE, and we'll have other webinars and podcasts or whatever to connect with people. But that connectivity with readership is really important to me. Also, connecting with our authors is important. So I want to make sure that people's publishing experience is absolutely as good as we can make it.
That's great. And obviously I'm a little biased here in that this is an online platform, but, of course, people interact and learn in different ways and through different media. And so how do you see JASE from that perspective, sort of expanding or exploring its role in terms of connecting to different types of readers or different types of users, so to speak?
Yes, I appreciate all the work that you and the rest of our social media team, all the work that you do in providing connectivity to the journal. I think this is extremely valuable. We've got a Twitter journal club tonight. All of this is important, and we need to just keep doing, I think, more and more as much as we can find time to do. It's all good. It's impressive how many people enjoy connecting with us in these different ways. Certainly, diversity and inclusion are important objectives, I think, of any, pretty much any platform, journal, project. This is how you get the best results, the greatest creativity. And so making sure that we have connected with diverse readers, authors, reviewers, associate editors, all of that is really important. That is how we'll be the strongest and best prepared for the future.
I think that's really great, and hearing about the AAC's overall sort of Big Ten philosophy and expanding to other groups and also sort of broadening the pool of people who are involved with cardiovascular ultrasound. I think that really dovetails very nicely in that there are different ways that people sort of access the same kind of content, and there are different people accessing that content. And so as the journal, as the field grows and involves people beyond sort of the traditional cardiologist and sonographer, and expands to a sort of a broader pool of individuals, those individuals, I think, will be increasingly looking to you and your leadership within JASE to be able to provide expert content and rigorous articles on particular topics. So that's fantastic. And so what do you, I guess, what do you personally hope to gain out of your tenure? This is more of a question about your own interactions with the journal and your own your background and where you're coming at. What do you personally hope to gain both from a personal and professional standpoint from your tenure, your leadership? I think it's always interesting to hear how what people bring to the table ultimately influences how they use that information?
Well, that's an interesting question, Jordy. I'm really always looking for the next big challenge. And so when I heard about this position being open, I thought this sounded really exciting. But it's really not about me. It's about doing something that I really believe in. And I really believe in the quality of the journal, the importance of cardiovascular ultrasound, and the future of our technology. And so doing what I can to develop, promote, and call attention to all of that, I think is good for our field and for our patients.
And what would you sort of along those lines, the future of our field are our trainees across the board. And so how do you think about the role of JASE with regard to trainees and people who are learning echocardiography, maybe for the first time, or trying to get more advanced experience within echocardiography? What do you see as the role of JASE with regard to that and supporting them?
I would encourage our young readers to pay attention in considerable detail to our guidelines. That is something that the journal does extremely well. Our guidelines, of course, are free for download for anyone, anywhere in the world. You don't have to be an ASE member to access them. But there's lots of valuable information. We're now looking into ways to make them living documents, that is, to publish briefer updates so that you don't have to wait for the process of the whole guideline document to be generated, which is quite an extensive process, going through the guidelines and standards committee and getting approval for the idea and forming the writing group. And then that committee does a fantastic job in vetting the document, making sure that it is accurate and representative. But that is a good place for our young readers to start. But also, if they're young readers that would like to be reviewers for JASE, they certainly can submit their names to our database. They can contact me, and I will be happy to make sure they get connected with us if they would like to review. And we can also post their interests. Anyone who now submits a paper to JASE does get entered in our database. And we also have an extensive database of reviewers. And from reviewers come members of our editorial board, and from the editorial board, associate editors. So it's a process, a very systematic and good process. And I think there's meritocracy in it.
It's certainly a great process, and it's great to get people involved in the review process as we sort of expand both expertise, but also people have unique insights that they bring to the table that may not be present elsewhere. So everybody, their attention and their ability to be able to sort of really interact and be part of the journal and the science that comes out of it, I think is a really tremendous opportunity. So I would also echo that, and no pun intended, and ask people who are listening to really consider being a reviewer. It's a really a great role. So I guess in the sort of last couple minutes that we have, what do you think are the I know you're giving a whole lecture on how to publish in JASE, but what do you think are the most important qualities of a JASE article?
First, I think it's important that the article addresses something in our mission. So cardiovascular ultrasound, and this can be, it can be a review article also. You don't have to wait for invitation to write a review. We would expect that the review article demonstrates understanding of cutting edge information and expertise in the field. But those can be submitted by any group. We publish novel research involving cardiovascular ultrasound. This is usually clinical research, but also basic and translational research are welcomed. And images are also an important part of our field. And so I would encourage people to think about how they can illustrate something or include an echo image in their work. These are also featured on the website. We welcome letters and brief communications. It's amazing how much information or how often a full-length submission can actually be condensed to a brief research communication, which really contains all the information and is just a little easier to digest.
And I am sure, you know, there are limited pages in the journal. It's nice to have the options of the letter to the editor and the brief research communication to be able to really maximize the impact that you can have from a single issue. So that's really important. I guess I would be remiss in this is the associate editor corner in not talking about the associate editors. So how have you already sort of found your relationship working with the associate editors, and how do you imagine working together with them in the future to be, and what your goals are with working with around the sort of editorial staff?
Yes, that's a good question. We really already have a wonderful tradition of collaboration with our associate editors. We have a meeting by Zoom every 2 weeks, and a detailed agenda is submitted. The associate editors think carefully about the papers that we're going to be discussing, which is really everything that we are contemplating publishing. And in many circumstances, we've had a discussion that has led to improved work of the authors or some new insight that really makes the paper much stronger than what was originally submitted. And that is just fantastic and a win-win for the journal and for the authors. I've been involved as associate editor of JASE now for the last 6 months, sort of in my editor in training role with Mike Picard, and that has been very valuable. I previously served as an associate editor for JAC.
It's really great, and I think, you know, people who don't necessarily see this from this perspective, the journal is at its core the people who belong to it and who write for it, and as well as review and edit for it. And so it really is a personal thing, and I think I do see a huge amount of improvement that people have when they submit an article and they get comments. It's that peer review process. I don't think anybody believes peer review is perfect, but I think it certainly serves a role, and in many cases can really highlight and expand and create a better paper and a better manuscript than was there before. And so, well, I appreciate your time. I know you're very busy, so we'll end the interview here. But thank you again for all that you do, and thank you for taking the leadership of JASE into the next 10+ years. We appreciate all that you're able to do, and certainly, you know, thank you for reaching out to the JASE readership. I would encourage everybody to submit your articles to JASE and to read the articles. So this valve disease issue that just came out was a great one. So encourage you to read it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jordy. Everyone, please send me your ideas.